Alex, I thought owning our home would be a dream, but it's turning into a nightmare, I said, stirring the spaghetti sauce absent-mindedly. Karen, Alex sighed, this is what families do. My parents just want to be involved. Involved? They're here every single weekend. This isn't living, I mumbled under my breath, but he didn't catch it, or he chose not to. The doorbell rang and Alex's eyes brightened. My heart sank. I knew what was coming. He swung the door open. Mom! Dad! So good to see you. Douglas and Nancy waltzed in without taking off their shoes. Douglas, a burly man with a booming voice, immediately took command. Hey, Karen, I see you're cooking. Smells good. Nancy and I were just saying we hoped you'd make dinner. Of course, Douglas, I managed through gritted teeth. Make yourselves comfortable. They had been doing this ever since Alex and I bought this house. Every Saturday, without fail, they arrived unannounced and stayed through Sunday. My plans, my life, discarded. Tonight was supposed to be different. I had planned a quiet night, just Alex and me. But here we were again. Karen, you need some help with that? Nancy offered, but her hands remained firmly in her lap. I've got it, I responded. Though my tone was polite, my patience was wearing thin. As the evening dragged on, I found myself doing everything, cooking, cleaning, and entertaining. Later that night, once his parents retreated to the guest room, I confronted Alex in the hallway. This can't go on. I feel like a guest in my own house. Karen, it's just the weekend. Why do you always blow it out of proportion? Alex retorted. I bit my lip, holding back the flood of frustrations. They expect me to cook and clean like I'm their personal maid. Can't they help themselves? It's just what families do for each other. Why do you have to make it a big deal? He turned away, signaling the end of the conversation. His dismissiveness stung. I walked into our bedroom and closed the door quietly. I didn't want another argument tonight. Exhausted, I fell into bed, my mind racing with thoughts of another lost weekend. Sunday arrived with more of the same. By lunchtime, I was washing the last of the dishes, my fingers pruning from the soapy water. Douglas lounged in the living room, flipping through TV channels, and Nancy chatted with Alex. No one even noticed how drained I looked. Finally, they prepared to leave. Bye, Karen. See you next weekend. Nancy chirped on their way out. Next weekend. The words echoed in my mind like a death knell. I forced a smile and waved. As the door clicked shut, I knew I had to find a way to bring change. This was our home, our life. I couldn't allow it to slip away under the weight of their relentless presence. Another Saturday rolled around, and my stomach tightened as the doorbell echoed through the house. I had barely finished my morning coffee when Alex's parents stormed in, bringing an unwelcome whirlwind of demands. Alex, help your father with the garden, Nancy ordered, already dressed in her gardening clothes. Karen, you can start on breakfast, can't you? Without waiting for my response, she continued, and after breakfast, we'll need some help organizing the attic. It's a mess up there. I looked over at Alex, hoping he'd see the exhaustion etched on my face. Instead, he nodded eagerly and followed his father outside. My heart sank as I retreated into the kitchen. As I cooked, I noticed Nancy pacing behind me, occasionally peering over my shoulder. She made a show of adjusting my work. You should add more salt. And are you sure those eggs are cooked properly? Douglas likes them a certain way. Grinding my teeth, I kept my tone controlled. I've got it, Nancy. Breakfast was a tense affair. Every bite felt forced as they critiqued every dish. Once it was over, I barely had time to inhale before Nancy ushered me towards the attic. I don't know how you've let it get so disorganized, she criticized, shaking her head. You have to stay on top of these things, Karen. Hours passed in a haze of dust and redundant suggestions from Nancy. She directed me, delegating the heavy lifting to me while she sorted through old holiday decorations. Finally, as the afternoon wore on, I found a moment with Alex. He was wiping his brow, seemingly proud of the work he'd done outside. We need to talk, I whispered urgently. Now? Can't it wait until later? Alex frowned, already distracted by his parents' calls from downstairs. No, it can't, I insisted. We walked to a quiet corner of the backyard. Your parents... It's too much. They expect me to be at their beck and call. I can't spend every weekend like this, don't you see? Alex sighed heavily. Karen, they're my parents. They're not going to be around forever. Why can't you just put up with them? It's family. And what about us, Alex? I felt the tears prickling my eyes. There's no room for us to be a family. It's all about them. He looked away, shaking his head. You're overreacting. This is how it is. Just accept it. I stared at him, the weight of his words sinking in. Accept it. That simple phrase, so dismissive, so final, spoke volumes about where I stood in his life. That evening, after another taxing day, I lay in bed unable to sleep. The light snoring of Alex beside me was almost mocking. He never saw it, could never understand the toll this was taking on me. His parents had become a wedge, driving us further apart with every unwanted visit. Determination surged through me. This was my home too, and I wouldn't allow their presence to overshadow my joy any longer. If Alex wouldn't stand by my side, I'd find another way to fight for the life I deserved. The seeds of a plan began to take root. Sunday arrived with an air of inevitability. I braced myself for the usual impositions, already weary in anticipation. As I moved through my morning routine, I kept turning one idea over in my mind. It was desperate, but I had to try something. When Alex walked into the kitchen, I took a deep breath. Alex, I think it's only fair if my parents visit too. Maybe next weekend? He stopped, coffee mug halfway to his lips. What? Your parents are always here, I explained, trying to keep my tone calm. It would be nice to have my parents over for once. Balance things out, you know? His eyes darkened instantly. Don't you dare invite them. This is our house. They'd only complicate things more. A sharp pang of hurt hit me. Complicate things more? How do you think I feel every weekend, Alex? It's always your parents, never mine. He slammed his mug on the counter, coffee spilling over the rim. If you don't like it here, maybe you should leave. His words stung like a physical slap. Maybe I will, I snapped, my voice trembling despite my attempt to stay cool. And you can live every day with your perfect parents. I stormed out, slamming the door behind me hard enough to rattle the frame. Tears of frustration blurred my vision as I grabbed my keys. Driving away, I directed my route to the one place I knew I'd find solace, my parents' house. When I arrived, my mom Linda opened the door. The worry instantly creased her face. Karen, what's wrong? Can I stay for a while? The words came out as a choked whisper. Of course, honey, she said, wrapping her arms around me. Inside, Dad looked up from his paper, concern etching onto his face as soon as he saw me. What happened, Karen? I inhaled deeply, trying to steady my voice. Alex, his parents are always there, every weekend. He doesn't see the problem. It's like I'm invisible. Linda squeezed my hand. You're never invisible to us. You know that. Dad's eyes hardened. You don't have to put up with this. You deserve to live a life that makes you happy, Karen. I don't know what to do. I can't go back. Not like this. Linda nodded. Then don't. Stay with us while you figure things out. That night I lay in my old bedroom, the familiar surroundings bringing a measure of comfort. I scrolled through my phone, searching for something, anything that could give me a way out. A divorce lawyer's website caught my eye. It seemed drastic, but so was my situation. The next morning I called the number. An appointment was set for later in the week. As I hung up, determination settled in. Douglas and Nancy had underestimated my resolve. They saw me as a pushover, someone who would endlessly accommodate their whims. But they were about to see a side of me they hadn't expected. That week, I stayed with my parents, a sense of clarity settling in. I knew what I had to do. Meetings with the lawyer confirmed my course of action. The legal process was daunting, but the lawyer assured me I had a strong case. We discussed filing for divorce and the steps to gather evidence of emotional neglect. One evening, while drinking coffee in the kitchen, my mom sat down next to me. Are you sure you want to go through with this, Karen? I nodded resolutely. Yes, Mom. Alex doesn't respect me. I need to reclaim my life. She gave me an encouraging smile. We're here for you, whatever you need. A few days later, I took the first step. I went back to the house while Alex was at work to collect my things. I needed more than just my clothes. I gathered documents, personal items, anything that would help me with the case. As I packed, I spotted a photo of Alex and his parents on the beach. My resolve strengthened. I heard the front door click open. My heart raced. I turned to see Alex standing there, looking confused. Karen, what are you doing here? I came to get my things, Alex, I said, my voice steady. I'm filing for divorce. His eyes widened with shock and anger. Divorce? Karen, you can't be serious. I'm dead serious, Alex. I deserve better than this. He took a step closer, trying to intimidate me. You think you can just walk away? You're not taking anything from this house. I squared my shoulders. I've already talked to a lawyer. I have every right. He laughed, but it was a bitter sound. We'll see about that. I didn't waver, didn't stop packing. I finished gathering what I needed and brushed past him. As I left, I glanced back one last time. The house, once our dream, now felt like a prison. Back at my parents' house, I started the process of piecing my life together. I focused on my work, pouring my energy into my job to distract from the emotional turmoil. My parents were a constant source of strength, their belief in me unwavering. One evening, as I sat down with my lawyer to finalize the divorce papers, my phone rang. It was Alex. "Karen, we need to talk," he said, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "Can't we just fix this?" Pain and frustration surged through me. "It's too late, Alex. I'm moving on." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I hung up, feeling a bittersweet mixture of sadness and relief. The next day, I handed over the signed papers to my lawyer, feeling a sense of finality. The battle wasn't over, but I was ready to fight. I was reclaiming my life, one step at a time, and I wasn't looking back. In the weeks that followed, I worked with my lawyer to gather evidence. Every text message, every voicemail, every instance of neglect, I documented it all. My parents were my pillars, always encouraging me, always reminding me of my worth. One Friday evening, I found a moment of peace in my parents' living room. My dad asked, "How's it going, Karen?" "It's a lot, Dad, but I'm managing. I never realized how strong I could be." He nodded approvingly. "We always knew, Karen." The next morning, my lawyer called. "Karen, we need to solidify our evidence. Can you get more footage from your house?" "I can try," I replied, a plan forming in my mind. I drove back to the house when I knew Alex would be out and installed small cameras in common areas. If capturing their behavior could help me, I needed to do it. I felt a pang of invasion, but reminded myself this was necessary for my case. By the following week, the cameras had already gathered significant footage. Every harsh comment, every dismissive gesture, it was all there. Satisfied, I retrieved the camera and handed the evidence to my lawyer. Later that day, I got another call from Alex. "Karen, you don't have to do this. Let's try to fix things." My voice was steady. "Alex, we tried, but you chose your parents over us." Silence hung heavily before he muttered, "You'll regret this." I ended the call, focused on the road ahead. The legal battle was just starting, and I couldn't afford distractions. Watching the footage with my lawyer, I felt an ache in my chest. The cold interactions, the dominance of Douglas and Nancy, it was all too clear. My lawyer nodded. "This solidifies your case. They'll see how he neglected you." One evening, sitting with my mom, I sighed. "Mom, what if they don't believe me? What if the court sides with Alex?" Linda squeezed my hand. "You are worth more than how they treat you. We'll be here, no matter what." My dad joined us, his expression determined. "You always have a place here, Karen. We will back you up." Their words fortified my resolve. Alex had underestimated me, and he needed to understand I was not backing down. The next day, I filed for divorce and formally submitted the evidence. As Alex received the notification, his desperation peaked. He called incessantly, leaving voicemails filled with pleas and anger. I ignored them all. Returning to my parents' house felt like a sanctuary each evening. My mom and dad supported me quietly, their presence a comfort in this storm. The silent scheme was set in motion. Alex's life would begin crumbling as the court date approached. Scattered and stressed, he couldn't balance his work and personal chaos. Each setback echoed through every missed deadline and sleepless night, driving him to the edge. My revenge was silent, devastating, and inevitable. The courtroom was silent as we all took our seats. My heart pounded as I glanced at Alex, who sat across from me, looking visibly stressed. His parents were absent, which seemed uncharacteristic, but I was relieved. This confrontation was between us. My lawyer stood up, addressing the judge confidently. "Your Honor, we present compelling evidence that Mr. Mason's actions caused significant emotional distress to my client, Mrs. Karen Mason." He played the footage from the hidden cameras. Everyone watched as Douglas and Nancy commanded every aspect of our weekends, their voices dripping with condescension. Alex's passive compliance was evident as he brushed off my pleas for space and respect. The courtroom felt heavy with the weight of the evidence. Alex fidgeted, his lawyer glaring daggers at him. "Mr. Mason, my lawyer continued, repeatedly disregarded Mrs. Mason's well-being, prioritizing his parents over their marriage. This led to a hostile living environment, causing her undue stress and emotional harm. Alex jumped from his seat, his voice strained. That's not true. They were just visiting. My lawyer turned to him, calm and collected. Just visiting? These visits stripped Mrs. Mason of her autonomy and peace in her own home. You facilitated this. The judge's gaze fixed on Alex. Mr. Mason, your actions or lack thereof have clearly contributed to this discord. The evidence speaks for itself. Feeling the gravity of the situation, I kept my eyes forward, refusing to look at Alex. Moments later, the judge ruled, in light of this evidence, I award Mrs. Mason ownership of the house and a significant portion of the joint assets. A wave of relief washed over me. The ordeal was not entirely over, but this victory was monumental. I glanced at Alex one more time, his face a mix of disbelief and anger. As the proceedings ended and we all stood to leave, Alex approached me, his expression desperate. Karen, this ruins me. Please, can't we talk about this? I steeled myself, meeting his gaze without flinching. It's too late for that, Alex. We're done. Walking out of the courthouse, my parents flanked me, their pride apparent. You did it, Karen, my mom whispered, squeezing my hand. Yes, and now it's time to move forward, I replied, feeling a sense of liberation mingled with lingering sadness. The man I had loved had become a stranger tangled in obligations that strangled our bond. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into finalizing the logistics of the separation. Alex tried to contact me multiple times, but I didn't respond. I was already rebuilding my life, renovating the house to erase the painful memories and claiming each room as a space for my new beginning. Life was slowly shifting. And for the first time in a long while, it felt like I was able to breathe again, free from the chains that had held me down. The aftermath of the courtroom victory brought a calm I hadn't felt in years. But it was a calm dotted with moments of harsh reality checks. Alex, predictably, spiraled. Reports reached me through mutual friends and colleagues. Alex had missed major deadlines at work. His performance plummeted, and soon enough he lost his job. I heard he spent most days sulking at his parents' house, unable to face the wreckage of his life. For once, Douglas and Nancy were unable to dictate a solution, and that brought an unexpected sliver of satisfaction. One evening, as I repainted the living room, my phone buzzed. The caller ID showed Alex's number. I hesitated, but decided to answer. Karen, he started, his voice cracking. Please, can we talk? I'm a mess. I need you. His desperation was palpable, but I kept my response cold. Alex, you made your choices. You chose them over us. I lost my job, Karen. I'm losing everything. His tone edged on hysteria. I paused, letting him feel the weight of his words. You're reaping what you sowed, Alex. I warned you, but you never listened. Before he could respond, I hung up. The line had been drawn long ago, and I was committed to moving forward. The next few weeks saw the final touches on my house renovations. The physical changes, new paint, new furniture, felt cathartic, symbolizing the fresh start I desperately needed. One crisp fall morning, as I was sipping coffee by the kitchen window, lost in thought about my next steps, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Alex standing there, looking disheveled and broken. Karen, please, he pleaded. I messed up. Can we please try again? I looked at him, feeling a twinge of the old love but overcome by the betrayal that had led us here. Alex, the past is gone. You can't undo what you did. His shoulders slumped. Karen, I'm so sorry. I don't know who I am anymore without you. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. You'll have to figure that out. You had your chance to build a life with me, but you threw it away. Now, live with what you've sown. He stood there, silent, tears forming in his eyes. For a moment, I almost softened, but then the memories of every painful, dismissive moment came flooding back. This was a consequence he needed to face. Goodbye, Alex, I said gently, closing the door. As the weeks turned into months, things settled into a new rhythm. I focused on my career, dug into hobbies I'd neglected, and rekindled friendships. Supportive notes and visits from friends reminded me that life was moving forward. One day, my friend Sarah dropped by. You look happier, Karen, she observed over a glass of wine. I am, I nodded, smiling genuinely. I finally feel like I'm living my life for me. The drama of the past year had carved a new path for me. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about finding justice and reclaiming my life. With every step forward, the shadow of the past grew fainter, and a brighter, self-empowered future loomed ahead. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly free. Months passed, and life began to take on a new sense of normalcy. The renovations on the house were complete, erasing any trace of the tumultuous past I'd shared with Alex. The place felt like my own sanctuary now, each room imbued with my choices, my style, my freedom. One spring afternoon, as I was planting a garden, Sarah arrived with a bottle of wine. "Thought you could use a break," she said, grinning. I wiped the dirt from my hands and motioned her to the patio. Perfect timing. I could use a drink. As we sat on the patio, Sarah looked around appreciatively. "You've really made this place your own. It's beautiful, Karen." "Thanks," I replied, sipping my wine. "It feels good to have control over my life again." The conversation flowed easily, and I felt a lightness I hadn't known in years. The weight of the past had lifted, replaced by a renewed focus on the future. A week later, as I wrapped up a project at work, my boss called me into his office. "Karen, you've been doing outstanding work. We'd like to offer you a promotion." My heart leaped. "Thank you. I won't let you down." Driving home that evening, I felt a sense of accomplishment. My professional life was thriving, and for the first time I felt completely at peace with where I was headed. One Saturday, I decided to visit my parents. They had been my rock through everything, and I needed to share my good news. As I walked in, my mom greeted me warmly. "Karen?" What a pleasant surprise. "Mom, Dad, I have great news. I got a promotion," I announced, smiling broadly. "That's fantastic," Dad beamed. "We're so proud of you." Mom hugged me. "You deserve this. You've worked so hard." We spent the afternoon catching up and celebrating, their pride in me palpable. Life had indeed taken a turn for the better. That night, lying in bed, I reflected on the journey. The pain, the heartbreak, it had all led to this moment of empowerment and self-discovery. Alex and his parents were a distant memory, their hold on me completely severed. A few weeks later, as I was enjoying a quiet evening at home, my phone rang. It was Alex's number. Curiosity got the better of me, and I picked up. "Karen," he said, his voice tentative, "I heard about your promotion. Congrats." "Thank you," I replied, keeping my tone even. I'm really sorry for everything," he added, his voice heavy with regret. For a moment, I felt a pang of something. Sadness, maybe, but it passed quickly. "Alex, it's all in the past now. I hope you find your own path forward," he sighed. "I guess this is goodbye, then." "Yes, it is. Goodbye, Alex." Hanging up, I felt a sense of finality. This chapter was closed, and I was ready to embrace the future. The garden I'd planted was starting to bloom, vibrant colors symbolizing the new life I'd cultivated for myself. As I stood on the patio watching the sunset, I knew one thing for certain. I was finally free. And the future was mine to shape. I stared at the rumpled sheets, a knot forming in my throat as the truth sank in. The lingering scent of sweat and sex hung heavy in the air, a cruel mockery of the life I thought I had. How could he? How could she? "Cynthia." Rick's voice trembled with guilt as he pulled the covers up, his bare chest glistening with perspiration. "It's not what it looks like." I wanted to scream, to lash out at the two people I loved most in this world, but all I could muster was a bitter laugh. "Really? Because it sure as hell looks like you were screwing my little sister in our bed." Kristen's face was buried in her hands, her slender frame shaking with sobs. "Sin, I'm so sorry." "Don't," I snapped, my voice like shattered glass. "Just don't." Rick reached for me, his expression a mask of desperation. "Baby, please, let me explain." I recoiled from his touch, bile rising in my throat. "Explain what? That you betrayed me with the one person I should have been able to trust above all others? That you turned our home, our marriage, into a cheap motel room tryst? It was a mistake," he pleaded, tears welling in his eyes. "A horrible, stupid mistake. It'll never happen again, I swear." I barked out a harsh laugh, raking my fingers through my hair. "You're damn right it won't, because we're done, Rick. Over. I want you both out of my house by tomorrow night." "Sin, no," Kristen cried, clutching the sheets to her naked body. "Please, we never meant to hurt you." "Well, you did." The anguish lanced through me like a white-hot blade. "You betrayed me in the worst possible way, and I'll never be able to look at either of you the same again." Rick reached for me again, but I shoved him away, my anger and hurt overriding any lingering love. "Don't touch me. Just get your things and go. We're through." As I stormed out, the enormity of what had happened threatened to crush me. My life, my family, everything I held dear, shattered in an instant by the two people I trusted most. The incessant knocking at my door wouldn't stop. I knew it was Rick, begging for another chance like he had been all week. Part of me wanted to ignore him, to shut out his pleas and hollow promises. But a larger part, the part that still foolishly clung to the memories of happier times, compelled me to answer. "What do you want, Rick?" I sighed, pulling open the door to find him disheveled and bleary-eyed. "Sin, please, you have to listen to me." He reached for my hand, but I snatched it away. "It was one stupid mistake, that's all. A moment of weakness that'll never happen again," I scoffed, crossing my arms over my chest. "With my own sister? How could you do that to me, to us?" Tears welled in his eyes as he dropped to his knees. "I don't know, baby." I was drunk and angry, and she was there, comforting me. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, he trailed off, burying his face in his hands. "God, I'm so sorry. You have to believe me." For a moment, a fleeting moment, I almost did believe him. The anguish in his voice, the raw emotion etched on his face, it tugged at the fragile threads still tying me to this broken man. But then the image of them tangled together, naked and sweating, flashed before my eyes, and a fresh wave of rage washed over me. "Get up," I spat, pulling him to his feet with surprising strength. "Get up and look me in the eye when you're begging for another chance you don't deserve." His eyes were wild, desperate. "Sin, I love you. What we have had, it's real. Don't throw it all away because of one horrible lapse in judgment." "One lapse?" I shook my head in disbelief. "Rick, you slept with my baby sister, in our marriage bed. How can I ever trust you again after that kind of betrayal?" "You can," he insisted, grasping my shoulders. "I'll do anything, anything at all to prove myself to you. Just say you'll give me another shot." For a long moment, I searched his eyes for any hint of the man I fell in love with all those years ago. The man who held my hand on our first date, who cried tears of joy when I walked down the aisle, who promised to love and cherish me until the end of our days. But all I saw was a broken shell, a man hollowed out by his own selfish lies and infidelity. "No," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "It's over, Rick. The papers will be filed in the morning." As I shut the door, blocking out his anguished wails, I felt something inside me harden. He made his choice when he betrayed me so completely. And now it was my turn to choose, to fight for what was left of my life and my dignity. No matter how much it hurt, the cramped bathroom felt suffocating as I stared at the two pink lines glaring back at me. Pregnant. Of all the twists this nightmare could have taken, I never expected this. A harsh laugh escaped my lips as I sank to the cold tile floor, my back against the wall. Of course I would be pregnant with Rick's child in the midst of his affair with Kristen. The universe had quite the cruel sense of irony. Part of me wanted to grab the test and hurl it across the room, to scream and rage against this latest cosmic injustice. But a larger part felt an overwhelming sense of calm wash over me. This baby, innocent and pure, was the one good thing to come from the ashes of my marriage. My child. Mine alone to love and cherish, free from the stain of their father's betrayal. The decision was made before I could second-guess it. I would keep this baby and raise it on my own if I had to. Rick didn't deserve to be part of its life, not after what he'd done. The buzz of my phone shook me from my reverie. Kristen's name flashed across the screen, no doubt another tortured plea for forgiveness to join the dozens already clogging my voicemail. With a surge of anger, I hurled the phone against the wall, watching it shatter into pieces. "Sin?" Rick's muffled voice came through the door. "Everything okay in there?" I almost laughed at the absurdity of his question, as if anything could ever be okay between us again. "I'm pregnant," I called out, my voice eerily calm. "The test just confirmed it." There was a long pause before he responded. Are you sure it's mine?" White-hot rage lanced through me at his implication. "Of course it's yours, you son of a bitch," I roared, leaping to my feet. Who else's would it be? The door flew open, and he stood there, hands raised in surrender. "Sin, I didn't mean it like that. I need to know for sure." "Well, you can be damn sure," I spat, shoving past him into the bedroom. "I haven't been with anyone else, unlike you." He flinched at the venom in my words, but pressed on. Okay, I believe you. Just please let me be a part of this baby's life. I whirled on him, eyes blazing with fury. After what you did? After destroying everything we built together by screwing my own sister? You don't get that right, Rick. Not anymore. His face crumpled in anguish. Sin, please, I'm begging you, that baby, it's all I have left now. No, I said, my voice hardening to steel. You made your choices, just like I'm making mine. And I choose to raise this child away from the toxicity of your lies and betrayal. We're through. As the tears streamed down his cheeks, I felt something inside me finally break free. The naive, love-struck girl who thought her fairy tale would last forever. In her place stood a woman reborn, hardened by the cruelest of life's realities, yet stronger for having survived it. I was done being the victim. From now on, I would be the author of my own destiny, and Rick would play no part in it. The baby kicked insistently, as if sensing the tension radiating off me. I rubbed my swollen belly, trying in vain to soothe the life growing inside me, a life that would soon be thrust into the chaos of my crumbling world. You can't be serious, Cynthia. Rick's voice was laced with disbelief and more than a hint of anger. Asking for that much in the settlement is highway robbery. I met his gaze levelly, my jaw set. I'm deadly serious. After what you put me through, I deserve every penny. He raked his fingers through his thinning hair, pacing the length of the lawyer's office. But that amount, it'll leave me with next to nothing to start over with. Where's the fairness in that? A harsh laugh escaped my lips. Fairness? You want to talk to me about fairness after you cheated on me with my own flesh and blood? I leaned forward, my eyes boring into his. I bent over backwards to make our marriage work, to build a life with you. And you threw it all away for what? A cheap thrill with my baby sister? Rick flinched as if I'd struck him. Good. I wanted my words to cut deep, to make him feel even an ounce of the pain he'd inflicted on me. Sin, please. He dropped to his knees in front of me, clasping my hands in his clammy grip. I was a fool, an absolute idiot, but you have to believe I never meant to hurt you like this. I love you more than anything. I snatched my hands away, bile rising in my throat. Save it for someone who still believes your lies, Rick. I'm through being made a fool of. His face crumpled, the mask of the repentant husband slipping. So that's it, then? You're just going to take me for everything I've got and leave me destitute? I'm taking what I deserve, I shot back, rising to my feet with effort. A chance to get back on my feet and provide for this baby without having to rely on you for a damn thing. Rick's eyes narrowed to slits. You're making a huge mistake here, Cynthia. Don't think for a second the courts will side with you over this. I matched his glare with one of my own. I have a pretty strong case, as I recall. A cheating husband who lied and betrayed his heavily pregnant wife in the worst way imaginable. I shook my head slowly. I like my chances just fine, thanks. As I turned to leave, the fight seeming to drain from Rick's body, a tiny voice inside whispered that maybe I was going too far, that the settlement figure I'd named was perhaps too steep, too vengeful. But another voice, louder and more insistent, drowned it out. This was what he deserved, I told myself, the consequences of his unforgivable actions. If it broke him, so be it. He'd brought it on himself. He didn't get to play the victim, not this time, not after everything he'd taken from me. The pounding on my door was incessant, jarring me from the first decent sleep I'd gotten in weeks. I knew without looking who it would be, the same person who had shattered what little peace remained in my life. Throwing on a robe, I flung open the door to find Kristen standing there, her eyes red-rimmed and desperate. What do you want? I spat before she could speak. Here to rub my face in your home-wrecking ways again? She flinched as if I'd struck her. Good. Sin, please. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but you have to hear me out. I don't have to do a damn thing, I shot back, arms crossed over my chest. You made your bed when you slithered into mine with my husband. Now you can lie in it. Tears spilled down her blotchy cheeks. I'm pregnant? Sin. With Rick's baby. The words hung in the air like a suffocating fog as I struggled to process them. Of course she was pregnant too. The universe just loved twisting the knife deeper with each new torture. Well, isn't that just perfect? I laughed bitterly. The two lying, cheating snakes get to play family while I raise my child alone. How storybook of you both. No. She reached for me, but I jerked away. No, Sin, you don't understand. I need your help. I stared at her incredulously. My help? After you stabbed me in the back in the worst way imaginable, what makes you think I'd lift a finger to help you? Kristen's eyes were wild, pleading. Because Rick, he wants nothing to do with this baby. He said it'll ruin his chances of getting back together with you. White-hot rage lanced through me at her words. Of course, that bastard would try to weasel his way out of this, to pretend the ultimate consequence of his actions didn't exist. Just like he'd tried to pretend his affair was some momentary lapse, a blip to be forgotten. So what? I shrugged, feigning indifference. Sounds like a personal problem to me. You two can sort out your own messes. But I can't do this alone, she wailed, fresh tears streaming down her face. I don't have anyone else, Sin. You're my family. Family. The word was like a physical slap across my face. This snake who had violated the sanctity of my family in the worst way was trying to claim that bond again? After everything? You lost any right to call me family the second you spread your legs for my husband, I hissed, poking her sharply in the chest. As far as I'm concerned, you're just the worthless homewrecker he stepped out with, nothing more. Her face crumpled in anguish, but I was beyond caring. Let her feel the slightest fraction of the pain she'd inflicted upon me. It was the least she deserved. Now get off my porch, I said, my voice dangerously low, and if I ever see your face again, I can't be held responsible for what I might do. As she turned and fled, I slammed the door behind her, the sound echoing through the hall like a gunshot. My hands were shaking, every muscle taut, as the weight of her words finally hit me. Rick was going to be a father again, with her. The idea was like acid burning through my veins. If he thought for 1 second that he could just walk away from this, from them, he had another thing coming. I would make sure he paid for this latest betrayal, if it was the last thing I ever did. The courtroom was deathly silent as the judge cleared his throat, envelope in hand. This was it, the moment that would decide just how far Rick's lies and betrayal had really gone. The DNA results confirm that Mr. Richard Moore. The judge paused, eyes flickering between Rick and a visibly distraught Kristen. Is not the biological father of the child Miss Randall is carrying. A collective gasp rippled through the gallery, but I remained motionless, utterly unsurprised. Of course he wasn't the father, just another lie in the tangled web he'd spun. Rick, however, looked as though he'd been struck. What? That's impossible. She said. Liar! Kristen screeched, rounding on him with balled fists. You lied to me, you bastard. Told me it was yours, so I'd leave Sin alone. I watched impassively as the court officers struggled to restrain her, something like pity stirring in my chest. She was just another of his victims. Really, a fool led astray by his silver tongue. The judge pounded his gavel, restoring order. If we could return to the matter at hand. His steely gaze fell on Rick. Mr. Moore, you'd also be wise to take this opportunity to revise the financial statements you submitted during these proceedings. A bead of sweat trickled down Rick's brow as he tugged at his collar. I'm not sure what you mean, Your Honor. Oh, I think you know exactly what I mean. The judge's tone brooked no argument. The tax documents and income statements we subpoenaed paint a very different picture than what you originally claimed. My head whipped around as I studied Rick's ashen face. He couldn't have, could he? Not after everything. But his silence, his refusal to meet my eyes, spoke volumes. You lied. The words slipped out in a hoarse whisper. You lied about your finances, too, to try and cheat me out of what I deserved. Rick opened his mouth, then closed it, shaking his head slowly. In that moment, I saw him for what he truly was, a sniveling coward who would do or say anything to save his own skin. My heart twisted violently in my chest. The judge fixed him with a withering stare. Mr. Moore, you have committed perjury and fraud upon this court with your falsified financial records. Not only that, but you engaged in a reprehensible pattern of lies and deceit that allowed this entire fiasco to unfold. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in as the courtroom held its collective breath. Therefore, I am awarding the entirety of the settlement amount requested by Mrs. Moore, in addition to the marital home and all other major assets. His gaze bored into Rick's stunned face. You have only your own dishonorable actions to blame for these consequences, sir. This ruling is final. The world seemed to tilt wildly around me as the judge's words echoed through the chamber. I'd won, I'd beaten him at his own lying game and taken everything in the process. A hollow victory, to be sure, but a victory nonetheless. As the bailiffs led a shattered Rick away, I caught his eye one last time. Any remnants of the man I'd loved, the man I'd devoted half my life to, were gone, burned away by the flames of his selfish deceptions. In their place was a broken husk, a sobbing wretch brought low by his own karmic reckoning. And as he disappeared through the door, I knew I would never look upon his face again. The spacious home felt cavernous and empty as I wandered its halls, my son Jacob babbling happily in my arms. This place, which had once represented the life Rick and I strived to build together, now stood as a monument to his failures. Every gleaming surface, every expensive furnishing, had been bought with the hard-earned money he tried so desperately to keep from me. The money that was rightfully mine after his countless lies and betrayals. A hollow victory, to be sure, but a victory nonetheless. Jacob's tiny hands patted my cheeks, drawing my attention back to his cherubic face. In that moment, watching his bright eyes crinkle with laughter, I knew I had made the right choice. This house, this life I was building from the ashes, was all for him now. Rick was merely a speck in the rearview mirror, a crucial step on the journey that led me here, but no longer a presence in our lives. I had survived his deceit and emerged stronger, more resilient than I could have imagined. The buzzer rang, shattering the moment's peace. Shifting Jacob to my hip, I made my way to the intercom, the voice identification system cheerily announcing, "Kristen Randall at the gate." I froze, hot anger lancing through me. The audacity of that snake, showing her face here after everything she'd done. I should have known better than to expect her to slink back into the hole she'd crawled out of. "Ma'am?" The AI's chipper voice piped up again. "Shall I admit the visitor or send them away?" Jaw clenched, I stabbed the comm button. "What do you want, Kristen? Here to try and weasel your way back into my good graces again?" There was a pause, then a tremulous sigh. "Sin, please. I know I'm the last person you want to see right now, but I really need your help." I barked out a harsh laugh. "My help? After you slept with my husband and tried to trap him with a baby that wasn't even his? You've got one hell of a nerve showing up here." I know. Her voice cracked with desperation. "Believe me, I know how badly I've messed up, how much I've hurt you. But Sin, I'm homeless. I've got nowhere else to go." The words hung in the air, deflating my anger for just a moment. As much as I despised her for her actions, she was still my sister, my blood. Could I really turn her away to fend for herself? Jacob gurgled softly, nuzzling my neck, and my resolve hardened once more. She might share my DNA, but she had long since forfeited the honor of being treated like family. "That's not my problem," I said, coldness seeping into my tone. "You made your bed when you betrayed me in the worst way. Now you can lie in it." "Sin, wait," her voice was thick with panic. "I'm pregnant! For real this time! I can't raise this baby on the streets, please!" I recoiled as if struck, bile rising in my throat. Of course, she would stoop to that level of deception again, using an innocent child as a pawn in her twisted mind games. "Save your lies, Kristen," I spat, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I don't have anything left to give you. No money, no shelter, no help. You're on your own." As her muffled sobs faded, I slumped against the wall, cradling Jacob close. In that moment, I pitied her even as I reviled her very existence, for she was well and truly alone in this world of her own making. But not me. Never again. I had my son, my beautiful reason for persevering through all the darkness. And as long as he was by my side, I knew I could overcome any challenge, any deception. Rick's betrayal may have tried to break me, but it had also remade me into a fiercer, more uncompromising version of myself. One that would never let anyone jeopardize the life I was building for me and my child. Not Kristen. Not Rick himself. No one. The sun-dappled park was alive with the sounds of children at play, their laughter ringing out across the vibrant green expanse. I smiled as Jacob raced ahead of me, his tiny legs pumping furiously as he chased after a kaleidoscope of bubbles. So much had changed in the 5 years since that fateful night, the one that shattered my world and set me on this new path as a single mother. Yet watching my son's face light up with unbridled joy, I knew all the pain and heartache had been worth it 1,000 times over. Mommy, look how high I can swing." Jacob's excited voice drew my gaze to the playground, where he was launching himself into the air with reckless abandon. Chuckling, I made my way over, ready to rein in his antics before he gave himself a concussion. "All right, little daredevil, let's take it down a notch before you." The words caught in my throat as my eyes landed on a hunched, disheveled figure sitting alone on a nearby bench. Even from a distance, the stringy hair, sallow complexion, and haunted eyes were instantly recognizable. Rick? A lead weight formed in the pit of my stomach as Jacob continued playing, oblivious to the ghost from our past. Part of me wanted to grab his hand and flee, to shield him from the man who had put us through so much pain and anguish. But another part, the part that had grown stronger and more resilient with each passing year, felt something else stirring inside me. Not anger, nor hatred, but pity. Steeling myself, I made my way towards the bench, my heart pounding in my ears. Up close, the toll of Rick's lies and deceptions was even more stark. His clothes hung loosely, his face etched with lines that made him appear decades older than his years. Well, I said softly, watching as his head snapped up in shock. "If it isn't the master of deception himself, fancy meeting you here." Rick's eyes widened as he took me in, his hands visibly trembling. "See? Cynthia? Is that really you?" "In the flesh." I gestured vaguely at his haggard appearance. "Looks like the last few years haven't been too kind to you, Rick?" He flinched as though I'd struck him, turning his gaze downward in shame. "Yeah, well, I guess that's what happens when you lose everything due to your own stupidity." An uncomfortable silence stretched between us, punctuated only by Jacob's peals of laughter in the distance. Part of me felt a twisted sense of satisfaction at seeing the great lie spinner brought so low, but the larger part simply felt sadness. For the broken man before me, and for the bright future we had once dreamed of building together. "You know," I said at last, "for what it's worth, I did love you once, with everything I had." Rick's shoulders slumped as he nodded jerkily. "I know, believe me, I know, and not a day goes by that I don't regret throwing that all away." "Well, regrets won't change the past." I shrugged, turning to watch Jacob scramble up the slide. "All we can do is try to learn from our mistakes and do better going forward." As if sensing the weight of our conversation, Jacob raced over and flung himself into my arms, his bright eyes shining with adoration. In that moment, I knew I had all the love and joy I would ever need right here. "Who's this, Mommy?" he asked innocently, pointing at Rick. I opened my mouth, 1,000 bitter recriminations rising to my lips. But one look at my son's cherubic face, and I realized. Rick's deceptions were in the past. The struggles he had put us through had only served to make me stronger, more resilient, more able to cherish the family I had fought so hard to build. "No one important, baby," I murmured, kissing Jacob's brow. "Just a ghost letting go of its chains. Let's go get some ice cream." As we turned and walked away, leaving Rick to watch with slumped shoulders, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. His mistakes, his lies, they no longer had any power over me or my life. I was free to love, to laugh, to live my life on my own terms, and in that moment, nothing else mattered.